Someone is just joining now, so can I welcome all members and officers to this meeting of the Town and Community Council Forum, which, due to government advice to practice social distancing, will be held virtually. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as is practicable following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, but I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members or officers wish to raise a point or question, you should press the hands up icon on the screen hand at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and when necessary will mute those not being used. I will now proceed to agenda business. And the first item on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence. Julie, please.
Thanks. I've had apologies from Councillors Altaf Hussain, Charles Smith, Carolyn Webster and Kerry Reeves. Thanks, Leader.
Julie. Are there any additional apologies from the virtual chamber that Julie has not just read out, please? Raise your hand if you do have any extra apologies. I can't see anyone raising their hands. In which case, we will now receive declarations of interest from colleagues, please. So I can see that Councillor Blundell and Councillor Davis would like to come in. Councillor Blundell, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just to declare a personal interest in item 6 of the agenda, community asset transfer update, as a member of Lalliston Community Council who has cap transferred a pavilion at Brynterian Community Centre and has put in expressions of interest on other community projects areas. But that'll be a personal one, as we don't make any decision today, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Blundell. Then we've got Councillor Davis, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. As Deputy Chairman of Caira Development Trust, Chair, we got a lease, I believe, currently running on the community centre, and there is, negotiations ongoing, obviously on hold now with the COVID and things, but we are looking for a cat transfer at some point, so I think I better declare interest in that. Number 6, please, if I could. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, and then Councillor Granville, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've also got number 6, Chair, as we discussed it on Wednesday. The transfer over of the football field.
Okay, so that to Canelli Community Council, is it, Councillor Granville?
Sorry, Chair, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Councillor Granville. And then I can see, is that Councillor Chapel? Please, Gary?
That's correct, Leader. Same one as again, item number 6, because of my association with Cefngill RFC and their asset transfer that we're applying for at the moment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chaplin. Welcome to the meeting, and I will also declare an interest as a member of Cefngill RFC Rugby Club. I'm also a member of Cefn Cribble Athletic Club, and I'm also a member of Cefn Cribble Bowls Club as well. So all clubs have been involved in the community asset transfer process. Okay, thank you, colleagues. Of course,
Can I come back in quickly?
Yes, of course,
You just reminded me, Chair, when he was talking there. I'm also a member of Natufallon RFC, which I believe are negotiating a cat transfer of Caira Welfare Park, I believe. So just to be on the safe side, I'll declare that as well. Right on item 6 again. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. And of course, if you identify during the meeting that you need to make a declaration of interest because you've only realised during the meeting, then please don't hesitate to raise your hand, because sometimes it isn't apparent until we reach that item on the agenda. Councillor Young, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I should declare an interest as being a member of County Community Hire Council, yes, which has applied for the running of the Great Western Avenue and other playing fields.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Young. We'll now receive the minutes of the last meeting of the forum. Do I have a mover that those minutes are a true and accurate record of the last meeting of the forum, please? Just thank God.
I'll formally move them, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Blundell. So the minutes of the 29th of November. Do I have someone who was present at that meeting that can second that, please? Councillor Pratt.
I'll second them. Thank you, Councillor David.
Very kind of you, sir. Everyone in agreement? Thank you, colleagues. We'll now receive the first report on today's agenda, and that is a report on neighbour notification and town community council consultation in the planning process. And I'm very pleased that we've been joined by the Group Manager for Planning and Development Services, Jonathan Parsons, to present the report. Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Leader. I believe we also have Rodri Davis on the call as well. If there are any questions arising from the report, Rodri is the development control manager who deals with day-to-day development control matters. Just to briefly go through the report that's been circulated to members, I think what we're trying to do is just give an indication of what the requirements are, the statutory minimum requirements for consulting with members of the public and community councils and other statutory consultees, and also to give an indication of what we do at Bridgend. If there's anybody, members, got any questions afterwards, I'm quite happy to answer those at the end. So essentially, when we receive a planning application, we have to undertake publicity. It's a requirement, and publicity refers to giving notice that a planning application has been received, so that neighbours and other interested parties can make their own views known. And the consultation also invites views of specialist bodies on certain types of development, it could be Natural Resources Wales, the Highway Authority, and so forth. So there are a list of statutory consultees, and there are a list of discretionary consultees. Now, in terms of neighbour consultations, generally we are required to consult with adjoining neighbours. So if a neighbouring property adjoins a site, we have to consult with them. But we also tend to go a bit further than that and consult people in a wider area. And in terms of town and community councils, there's a statutory requirement to inform community councils and town councils of planning applications. And most planning applications would fall within the categories where we would have to then consult. Now, there's different types of publicity for planning applications. We can use Psych Notices, which you would see around the locality. They are yellow or green paper, which would indicate where planning application has been submitted, and it's located in an area that's close to where that development will take place. We publicise developments in newspapers that circulate in the locality, and we also serve or write directly to any known adjoining landowner or occupier. We also publish information on our own website. Now, it's interesting that legislation or statute requires us to do one of those things. You don't necessarily have to do it all. We also have some discretion as well over who we consult with and the sort of period that we have to consult. So that we've got to give a certain amount of time. Now, we in Bridgend, we tend to go over and above the statutory requirements. We need to give a minimum of 14 days. We generally give 21 days, and we have previously extended that to 28 days when there were issues on our online representation system. So we've extended that period to ensure that people have an adequate amount of time to respond or make their comments known on planning applications. We also can be flexible as well. If a consultee, for example, indicates to us that they need more time to make comments, then we can take that into account. And generally, as long as that doesn't interfere with the determination of that plan application, we can exercise discretion in that. Now, we have had some representations from some town and community councils about being sent copies of neighbour objections to planning applications. I think the reason behind that is to ascertain the sort of strength of local feeling. And we can't do this directly. For one thing, there is an issue of data protection. And even if we did have the individual neighbours consent to forward their representation on that, there is an issue, a resource issue in having to take out particular information or personal information before we do that. So that'll be a little bit difficult for us to do. It is possible potentially for town and community councils to approach and advise residents that they can, if they wish, send a copy of their representations direct to them. But that's something that we couldn't control, and we wouldn't require it in developments. I think that is essentially a very sort of quick run through of the report, Lisa. I'm quite happy to expand on that or answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you very much for that, Jonathan. That's a useful précis of the process around consultation that town and community councils are involved in. Do we have any questions for Jonathan, please? Oh, Councillor Edwards, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one, Jonathan, regarding neighbours consultations. You say that you expanded further. Can you tell us how far you expanded? Because very often we get questions asked or I've been consulted, but so-and-so within a very short distance away hasn't. So have we got a definitive distance whereby we consult?
Very good question. There is no set distance, it's discretionary. As I said, we're only compelled to actually consult with the adjoining landowners or the adjoining neighbours. So that's the minimum that we have to do. As I said, we try to go further and beyond that. And I suppose it depends on the type of development concerned. If it's a householder development, then we may consult with the people either side. We may consult with properties at the back who are looking onto that property, or if it's something that alters the front of the house, we may consult with neighbours across the road. I think there's only so far you can go with development before you go beyond what's reasonably necessary. Obviously, a larger development, where there's potential to affect more neighbours, then we tend to go further, and we would. If it was a major development, for example, we would extend that beyond the sort of adjoining neighbour. We would tend to go further. We would, where the access point is coming into that, we would consult people near there, and where there was any sort of longer or distance views of the development, we would seek to consult people reasonable distance away to inform them of that development. But we'd also back up anything of that nature, anything major, we'd back that up with a psych notice or psych notices. Wouldn't just be one, possibly for some developments to be more than one, and we put them in a location that's close to the development, but also where people can actually see it. We wouldn't hide the psych notice away where you wouldn't be able to see it, but if people are passing in the street, they would look at the sort of brightly coloured notice, and hopefully they can see what's coming forward. But there's no fixed rule, and it depends on the type of development, the scale of it, and the size of it. But what we aim to do is rather than have to go back and consult neighbours and start that process again, we'd rather get it right in the first place, and rather go a little bit beyond what we need to do to ensure that everybody is given the opportunity to make a comment. I'm not sure if that sort of clarifies the issue, but there's not much science behind it, but it's more about the discretion of the officer that's dealing with the application. It could also be the case that the officer goes out on site and sees that, oh, actually we should have consulted more neighbours, and then that process it starts again. So it's a little bit of trial and error in some cases, but generally we get it right.
Thank you for that comprehensive answer, Jonathan. Are there any other questions, please? Councillor Pratt, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for not having a video. I don't have a camera here at home. I understand the crux of the argument about wanting for planning committees on town and community councils wanting to know what their residents are saying, and on the other side I understand the restrictions within GDPR. So I was wondering whether it would be feasible for the Borough Council and the Planning Authority to advise adjacent consultees that town and community councils are engaged in this process. So if you want to make concerns known to the Borough Council, they also can make them to their town and community councils as a statutory consultee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Pratt. I'll bring Councillor Unwin in, and then I'll ask Johnson to respond to that point and any point or question that Councillor Unwin has. Councillor Unwin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's the usual old thorny question about the period of time that town and community councils are given to comment on applications. I have to say at the outset that BCBC have been very flexible over the years, and that's fabulous. But there is this statutory period that's always given of 3 weeks. Now, we all know that most town and community councils don't meet every 3 weeks. They meet every 4 to 5 weeks. Now, is there anything in legislation that can allow for the period to be extended so that we always get within the statutory period? Because 3 weeks is frankly not good enough as far as town and community councils are concerned. You get an application come in a day after you've met. Well, you haven't got 3 weeks. You've got 4 or 5 weeks before you might meet again. So is there any leeway there or any representation that can be made to the statutory bodies to get that extended? Because 3 weeks is not long enough.
Thank you, Councillor Unwin. So over to you, please, Jonathan.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, councillors. I'll address the point from Councillor Pratt first. We got to be very careful what information we provide to residents, and the wording of consultation is indicated in statute. I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it's not for town and community councils. They're not part of the decision-making process, and I think we would find ourselves in hot water if we were to advise residents to contact town and community councils to air their grievances or air their views. That's not part of the function of planning. I mean, if residents and neighbours wish to do that, then they're entitled to do so, but we can't really direct them to do that. And I think applicants would be rightly concerned if we were to do that. I think it's seen as we've been doing something that's outside the scope of our control, and we would have to word that letter outside of the statutory model to do that. It is an interesting point, however, and I fully take on board about the role that town and community councils have in their communities, and that's something that can't be underestimated. But the planning process as it stands doesn't quite allow for more of that central role in planning decisions. And that said, any comments that are made by us by a town or community council are taken on board. They are taken very seriously, and they are addressed when the officer writes the report. But we can't really step beyond the bounds of what we are allowed and not allowed to do. It's a bit of a yeah, although there is flexibility, it doesn't extend that far, unfortunately. Turning to Sir Councillor Unwin's point, I think I think 21 days is a reasonable period. Bear in mind, you've only got 8 weeks to determine the application. I can't really extend it beyond that unless there's a valid reason beyond to do that, because if I don't determine that application within 8 weeks, then the applicant can appeal against non-determination, and that decision then is taken out of our hands. So we compromise with 21 days. We have in the past extended this to 28 days where that's allowable. But at the moment we have got to strike this balance between what is reasonably a reasonable consultation time and what is how we can, the time constraints we have got to make that decision. So yeah, it's trying to get that balance. I fully take on board the comments that were made, and I understand about the meetings of town and community councils but I'm what I would stress, however, is that if the town and community council has got a genuine reason to ask to extend that time, then we will consider that. But that communication needs to come to us, and it's unfortunately we do rely on a lot of electronic communications for that to happen, and certainly if the clerks wish to send an email to us to make that as a request, then we will certainly take it on board. But there are some decisions we're under pressure to get determined, and that again is a Welsh Government requirement as part of our planning performance agreement or planning performance structure. So we're going to try and make that balance. On the bigger schemes, sometimes there's clearly going to be it's going to take longer than 8 weeks do that. It's 8 weeks to determine. Some of those big schemes will take longer, but that has to be agreed with the applicant. And in that being the case, then we can extend the consultation period. And also sometimes on the larger schemes where amended plans are received and schemes evolve and change, then we will reconsult. If we get extra details in, if the scheme changes, then we'll reconsult and that process starts on over again. So I think we're more than reasonable in the time allowed for organisations to comment.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. Is there any other questions from colleagues, please? The recommendation is that colleagues note the report. Do I have a move in for the?
I move we note, Chair.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that?
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pratt, did I just see you raise your hand, or was that to second?
Yeah, that was to second, Chair. Don't worry.
Thank you. Thank you. We're third in it now then, Councillor Pratt. Okay, so is everyone in agreement with that? Yeah. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you very much to both Jonathan and Rodri. And if you do have any questions about the process that only occurred to you after the meeting, or on reflection you have after the meeting, then please don't hesitate to get in touch with the planning service. It is a planning service that works very hard to try and work closely with town and community councils because of the statutory role that you have. It's a very important statutory role, and it's in everyone's benefit that relationship is an effective one, so that planning applications can be dealt with on a timely basis, but also that they are that the consultation is as full as it can be within the legislation and regulations that are set out. Okay, thank you very much, both Jonathan and Rodri, and no doubt you will be seeing you again soon, because it's one of our favourite topics, planning, at the Town and Community Council Forum. So we'll no doubt be seeing you back, probably to discuss the LDP at some stage. So thank you both for your attendance. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Yeah.
And thanks, Jonathan and Rodri. And I will receive a report on the medium-term financial strategy 2022 to 2023 to 2025 to 2026. And that is a report of our Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change, our Section 151 Officer, Caris Lord. Over to you, please, Caris.
Thank you very much, Chair. And just for those of you who I've not met before, I'm Caris Lord. I'm the new Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. So as the Chair said, I'm here really to provide you with an update to the forum members with regards to our medium-term financial strategy and also the budget planning process for the Council for the coming year. So just in summary, the strategy is a key document for the Council, and it sets out our spending priorities, our key investment objectives, and also our budget areas targeted for savings in the coming years. So the strategy itself includes a financial forecast for that period that's already been mentioned, so 2022 to 2026, but it also gives a more detailed draft revenue budget for the coming financial year. So with regards to the coming financial year, the Council wants to continue to support the most vulnerable people in our society. So we've looked at some key areas in relation to that in supporting the budget. So we've tried to ensure that the Council will seek to raise additional income where it can. However, it is acknowledged for the coming few years that there will be limited opportunities to do this, given the immense challenges that COVID-19 has brought on our population. The Council will continue to seek alternative ways of delivering services if that can ensure greater sustainability and better efficiency. We will continue to look at savings, and after decades of substantial budget savings, the opportunities for large-scale reductions of this sort are now very difficult to achieve, but they do remain an important element of the MTFS. We're continuing to look at all of our property portfolios to see whether there is any opportunity there either for future income generation or indeed rationalisation of our buildings. And we're continuing to look at changes to service provision to see whether or not we can review our services to make sure that we continue to provide and prioritise those services that are most important to the people in Bridgend. So if I just turn to this coming year's proposed budget, the proposed net budget for the council next year is 319.5 million. And we've accounted for various issues in coming to the budget settlement. So we've got cost pressures in there of just under £12 million. And some of the most significant pressures that we're facing going forwards are implementation of the Additional Learning Needs Education Tribunal Act, costs of home to school transport, increased pressures in social care, and also the impact of the increase in the real living wage in the social care sector. We have also been able to identify budget reductions for next year, so there are proposed reductions of 631,000 in the budget, and it has been possible to reduce some of the savings required as a result of the draft settlement which we received, which I will come on to in a minute. So the report details for you each service area for the council. And so for education, in relation to the education, the council is proposing to spend £131 million in the coming year. Also, there will be capital spending to support the Band B programme under the 21st Century School Modernisation Programme. It's important to note that there is a change in that due to our settlement, it's proposed that schools do not have to find the proposed 1% annual efficiency target that had been identified in the previous versions of this document. In relation to social care and wellbeing, the council is proposing to spend £78 million in the coming year. And the council strategy is to transform how we work with people, and the service has been introducing new ways of working which are sustainable in the long term. And the budget proposals for the coming year do build on that as we go forward. And the council is also proposing to spend around 22 million on public realm going forward. And it is a challenge for the council to continue to meet public expectations on these highly visible and tangible services within our overall council budget. So just to outline our position for the budget going forward, we had a very late settlement this year. We didn't have our settlement for the coming financial year until the 21st of December. And the draft settlement this year gave a detailed settlement for the coming year, but also gave us some planned allocations for the following 2 financial years. This is important. We've not had that for a while, but it does help us to plan on a longer term basis with regard to our finances. So that's been a positive development this year. The headline figures across Wales for local government for the coming year was an increase of 9.4%, an average increase. And as far as Bridgend is concerned, the increase for the coming financial year is 9.2%, which is significantly more than we had anticipated. I'd have to stress, though, that there are a number of significant cost pressures we need to fund within that increase, which does include additional funding to meet the teachers' pay deal for the remainder of the current year and for next year, to meet the new requirements in relation to national insurance contributions, and to fund the introduction of the real living wage for care workers. This is a new element and we're still working out the details of that. One thing I do need to stress is that during the current financial year and indeed last year, the council received monies from Welsh Government via what we call the Hardship Fund, which helps us to meet the additional costs and lost income that we have experienced as a result of the pandemic. What's very clear in our settlement for next year is that this grant will not be available. So the budget that we set will need to take account of any additional spend that we may still have in relation to the pandemic. So that's some detail on next year, but the MTFS looks forward further than that and actually looks forward for 4 financial years. So what the document outlines for you is that this draft revenue budget detailed in the papers is assuming a zero increase in council tax for the coming financial year. And as I've said, we had a better than anticipated settlement, so we've been able to factor that into the draft budget. But going forward, the financial challenge does remain considerable. Therefore, there are assumed annual increases in the council tax for the following years after that. We've done some financial modelling, and on the basis of that financial modelling, the authority needs to find £21 million between 22-23 and 25-26. In doing this modelling, we've made some assumptions about demographic changes, about inflation, about new requirements on the council, and around increased staffing costs, particularly in relation to the national living wage and the national insurance contributions. To date, £4 million of those savings have been identified. So obviously work is continuing now around these particular pressures, and the MTFS is reviewed on a regular basis, and it will be changed as and when any of the information that we've used changes as we move forward. So just to outline for you the timetable now with regard to setting the final budget for the council. The document you have in front of you this afternoon was considered by Cabinet on the 18th of January and has now been to all of the scrutiny committees during January. The final budget proposals will go to Cabinet on the 22nd of February and then through to Council for final resolution on the 23rd of February. If I may, I'd just like to thank the Town and Community Councils actually, because for forwarding their agreed precepts to us for the coming financial year as requested. We've had them all, so thank you all very much. And obviously these will be included now as part of the final report to Council at the end of February. So if I may, Chair, just to say that it's recommended that the Forum receives and considers this report that went to Cabinet on the 18th of January on the draft medium-term financial strategy for the period 22-23 to 25-26. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much for that report, Caris. Are there any questions for Caris on the medium-term financial strategy and the budget, please? It must have been a very comprehensive report, Caris, because there are no questions. Again, what I would say is that, I've got Councillor Unwin coming up, but I don't know if that's Councillor Unwin or if it's Councillor Bledsoe, because it looks remarkably like Councillor Bledsoe, but it's up as Councillor Unwin. But I'll take whoever's at the end of that that hand.
There you go, David.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just one question on Appendix B, which is part of that document. I'm a bit concerned about the relaxation or cessation of the tourism contract with AMA Associates. It appears to me from this document that we have withdrawn completely from any tourism promotion. Now, is that correct, or is this just a facet of tourism, and that there are other aspects of tourism which BCBC are promoting? Because there is no doubt that with the staycations which are being reported nationally, this is the biggest increase in entrepreneurialism in this area that we've seen for a long, long time. Staycations apparently are up 40%. Now, whether with COVID and so on, relaxation, it will reduce from that, I don't know, and nobody will know. But it does seem to me that if we are, withdrawing from tourism promotion, that's perhaps not a very good thing at this particular time. I'd like the views of the officer on that aspect.
Thank you for that, Councillor Unwin. Caris, please.
I think it's fair to say that the council uses a number of different ways of promoting itself, and this is just one of them really, and that work is ongoing to ensure that we do promote Bridgend as much as we possibly can. So we do that both internally via the use of things like our website, but also we are seeing more people coming to Bridgend now, actually. So the work that we're doing to promote Bridgend is certainly having a very positive effect. So I think everybody could say we could always do more, but I think we're reviewing the way in which we're promoting Bridgend and the different way in which we can promote tourism. And we feel that there maybe some of the other mechanisms that are used within the authority will have a better reach than the one that maybe you've just mentioned. Does that answer your question?
Well, so long as we are continuing to promote Bridgend in the fullest possible fashion, because I do see from going around South Wales, whether it's Monmouthshire, whether it's Swansea, whether it's up in Merthyr and so on, there's always printed promotional material available at either stations, bus stations, in tourist information offices and so on, promoting those areas. But I honestly do see precious little being promoted for Bridgend. If you go into Bridgend railway station and you look in their facility for picking up leaflets, there's nothing about Bridgend at all. It's all about the other areas. So, you know, what are we actually doing for Bridgend?
Thank you for that, Councillor Unwin. I do know that this is one strand of work that we undertake to promote Bridgend as a tourist destination, and we'll continue to use those other portals and those other avenues to promote Bridgend through social media in particular, which of course continues to grow in importance, and we're very pleased to report that the number of tourists visiting Bridgend has reached record high levels over the last 12 months, and the contribution to the Bridgend economy in terms of pounds has reached a record high level as well. I'm sure Councillor Unwin will be pleased excuse me, about that. We can certainly inquire about printed information and about the availability of that, and about its availability at Bridgend railway station as well. Excuse my coughing. So we'll pick that up. Thank you, Councillor Unwin. And then we've got Councillor Watts, please. Councillor Watts.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. Yes, I just want to back Councillor Unwin up on this. It sounded very similar to something I said about 10 years ago, actually, in Council, where the M4 motorway service station at Magor, if you stop there and go use the services, you will see a stand there with leaflets about everything going on in Wales, except anything to do with Porthcawl or Bridgend. I haven't stopped there for a few months, but it was certainly the same, let's say 3 or 4 months back, where there was no literature in the first service station that you come into on the M4. And I think that's been remiss for many years. And I think if you're going to print something, then that's the place to stick it. So I just wish to back up Councillor Unwin on that comment.
Thank you for that, Councillor Watts. Excuse me. Are there any other questions, please? No. Well, if you do have any additional questions, then Caris is very pleased to answer those questions. Obviously, outside of the meeting, and you've got the contact details at the bottom of the report. And apologies, Caris, that's how well you've settled in. I forgot to welcome you to your first meeting of the Town and Community Council Forum. I've stopped doing that now because you've settled in so well. I forget that you're still new to many colleagues and many forums. So apologies for that. And Again, it's a topic that certainly we return to at least on an annual basis, and we do value the input of town and community councils in terms of not only obviously setting their precepts in a timely way, but also participating in the consultation. And we're always thinking and looking at different ways of engaging with town and community councils on that. And next year will be no different, I'm sure. Thank you very much, Caris. And we'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, our final report, which is on community asset transfers and an update on the progress, the very good progress that is being made. And our community asset transfer officer, Guy Smith, is here to present the report. So very warm welcome to Guy, and over to you, please.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, the report's very detailed, so I'll just try and tease out the main points. Obviously, the purpose of the report is to provide representatives of the forum with an outline of the changes to Bridgend County Borough Council's community asset transfer policy and the support and opportunities currently available to town and community councils. The biggest change that's happened since I last reported to the Town and Community Council Forum is obviously we've updated our CAT policy document, which is included in detail at Appendix A. The main changes to the policy are the priority of assets. So priority 1 assets now are sports pavilions, playing fields and community centres. Priority 2 are playgrounds, play areas, free car parks, allotments, and then priority 3 is everything not included in priority 1 and priority 2. What we've tried to do in the updated policy document is introduce fast track system, so that one of the biggest criticisms we've had since I've been in post is the length of time it takes to complete community asset transfers. So recognising this, we've introduced fast tracking, which is a streamlined process where previously we required detailed business plans. Now we only need 5-year financial forecasts. Again, we have a capping support contract where business advisors can assist community groups, including town and community councils, prepare either business plans or detailed financial forecasts. The other biggest change was announced by Cabinet in February 2020, where I'm sure members of the forum are aware that historically we created a community asset transfer fund, which was £1 million pot of money back in 2015, which was primarily at that time aimed at sports pavilions. That was extended to include other physical assets such as community centres. Back in February 2020, we also introduced pitch improvement and drainage capital grants of up to £25,000. We also introduced pitch maintenance equipment grants up to £10,000 to allow community groups to undertake self-management of green spaces. In October 2020, the council agreed to a further investment in the programme by over £250,000. With regards, 3 new posts, fixed-term posts of a CAT surveyor, green space assistant and a CAT assistant to ensure that this process of community asset transfer again was speeded up. Additional resources of £50,000 towards revenue for pitch and drainage improvements was also approved, and sundry CAT expenditure of £50,000 was also agreed. Paragraph 4.12 of the report outlines in summary the progress made, particularly during the last 2 years of the COVID pandemic. Appendix B also provides detailed information on the transfers that have been progressed. Paragraph 4.13 outlines the 8 transfers completed to date. That should have an additional one as well, because paragraph 4.14 indicates that Tudor Park playing fields was due to be completed to Maestig Park FC, and I'm pleased to confirm that was actually completed on the 28th of January after this report had been written. Appendix C includes 2 brief case studies for Brincethin Rugby Football Club and rest-based sports that shows or provides a flavour of what can be achieved by community asset transfer. Paragraph 4.16 gives an idea of the next 10 community asset transfers that we're hoping or anticipate will be completed in the coming months. 4.17 shows the 8 playing fields and pavilions that we're currently in discussions with town and community councils to be transferred in 2022-23, hopefully. And the remaining paragraphs of that section outlines the other transfers that have been undertaken to town and community councils. One of the most pleasing aspects of the community asset transfers during the pandemic were the transfer of 10 out of our 12 bowling greens to bowls clubs under self-management agreements while long-term leases are being progressed. In 2021-22, the council only maintained 3 bowling greens, and it is hoped and anticipated that by the 1st of April, these would also be under self-management agreements. I think the transfers to bowls clubs has highlighted the sports clubs would like to undertake the maintenance of their own playing surfaces so they can be improved. And paragraph 4.32 outlines some transfers that are anticipated will be completed to sports clubs by the 1st of April this year. In addition, there are 3 transfers to town and community councils of playing fields. That is also hoped will be completed by the 1st of April. Section 4 outlines where we're at with regards to the strategic review with 3 major parks. The first phase of the review was completed in May 2021. The second phase is just recommenced, and that is now down to 2. That will be Newbridge Fields and Maesteg Welfare Park, as Arbor Fields, or better known as the Planker, is currently subject to community asset transfer discussions with Ogmore Vale Community Council. Obviously, the staff resources has increased in the last few months, and I think that highlights the progress that we have made during that short period. Sadly, our CAT surveyor resigned at the end of December to relocate to London, and we're in the process of trying to recruit a replacement. In conclusion, obviously, we've had very good experiences of working with town and community councils, and we look forward to increasing our partnership working and collaboration with yourselves going forward. Obviously, I'm happy to take questions in general about community asset transfers, but I would ask that specific questions on particular sites are done outside of this meeting, and you've got my contact details at the end of the report.
Thanks very much for that, Guy. It's really pleasing to see the progress that's been made, and a big thank you to you and the very small team that we have working on this for what you have achieved by working so closely with clubs and town and community councils as well. Councillor Edwards, please, you wanted to come in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hello again, Guy.
Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, very pleasing to see that some very difficult issues in the Llyndy Valley are finally coming to resolution. My question concerns the welfare park. Obviously, a bit of a jewel in the crown in Maesteg. Historically carved out of the mountainside by our forefathers and held in high regard within Maesteg. There doesn't seem to be many stakeholders interested in various aspects of the park. By that, I mean the playing fields, the tennis courts, and it seems to me that the only stakeholder big enough to manage that facility is the town council. And yet we've asked for a lot of detail regarding on costs for various aspects of the park, and none of that is coming through. Further meetings without this information seem to be rather futile. So I know that we have a company looking at these major parks and looking at a way forward, but we do need the on costs. We do need, no one enters into any business proposition without knowing exactly what you are faced with from a financial aspect, and that is not available to us at the moment. I don't know what input you have into chasing that up, but we would certainly need that before looking at progressing it any further. Thank you, Guy.
Thanks, Councillor Edwards. Well, obviously, first off, I would agree with yourself that obviously Maesteg Welfare Park is a tremendous asset and it needs more tender loving care, to be honest with you. As you quite correctly say, the sports clubs there are not going to be the primary driver for development of that park going forward. Obviously, working in partnership with Maesteg Town Council would be a plus, and obviously I would welcome those discussions. As you quite correctly say, I know internally we have difficulty in coming up with costing information for the Parks Department. And again, I think we look at it, you know, we've come up with figures for how much it costs to maintain a pitch. I think going forward, we need to look at how much it costs to maintain a particular asset, because we're a Maesteg Welfare Park. There's a lot more than just rugby and football pitches. You've got the playground, you've got the tennis courts, as you mentioned, and it's my understanding that the consultants engaged for this work have already began discussions with Tennis Wales, for instance, about how those tennis courts could be resurfaced. So fully appreciate what you're asking for with regards to that information, and going forward it will be a primary aim, particularly with the Parks Department, to get some meaningful information, because the information in its current form would be worthless in all honesty, because it isn't calculated on that basis. It's more sort of top sliced, in all honesty. So going forward, we do need to get some proper figures for yourselves.
Okay, thank you for that, Guy. And I'm sure that information will be provided, because it is one of the jewels in the crown, and it's important that we develop that in partnership. I can't see that anyone else has raised their hands, so Councillor Unwin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a simple matter. On the front page, on page number 61 of the report, it mentions under priority 2, which I accept is some way down the line at the moment, but it does mention allotments there. Bridgend Town, of course, have 5 lease arrangements for allotments, which are working very well, 125 plots. Just for clarification, is it the intention to alter any of those leases and transfer the rights, if you like, to the town council, or are these relating to allotments which are not subject at the moment to any sort of lease agreement in other parts of the county borough?
I think it's fair to say, obviously, if you've got a current arrangement or lease with the County Borough Council, then obviously we're not looking to change any of those requirements or what is there at present. Obviously, the County Borough manages other allotments, and I think it's those that we are looking at. Obviously, we have a statutory duty to provide allotments, and that's where we're at, really. So if towns and community councils have got an interest in taking over the responsibility for allotments, that's something we'd be interested in listening to.
Thank you for that, Guy. Does that answer the question, Councillor Unwin? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I can't see that anyone else wants to come in, but again, please don't hesitate to contact Guy if you do have any questions about the process and about individual sites or projects, because again, this program will only be successful through a close working relationship with town and community councils. And I know there's been a number of projects where that's been very effective. I'm thinking of Pencoed Town Council, Guy, and the work that you've done there. It's not appropriate in all instances, but it certainly is in several locations, and has proved to be a very effective way of managing those facilities, particularly when there's multiple users. And we've just discussed one such classic example of where there's clearly advantages in a town or community council taking on the role. Okay, well, thank you, Guy, and again a big thank you to you and your team. You're a dedicated officer, and I'll keep saying this because it's still true, and it should be recognised that you work incredibly hard, and anyone who has any dealings with you will know that is the case, and you'll do your very best for clubs and communities and town and community councils across the borough, and I know that will continue, and the excellent work of your small team will continue as well. So thank you, Guy, and again, perhaps we can return to this in say 6 to 12 months if the forum would like that, because it is a topic that is of interest for obvious reasons to town and community councils. So we don't have any other reports. That was our last report, and there are no urgent items that have been raised with me in accordance with the rules. So I therefore will bring the meeting to a conclusion, and I thank you all for your attendance and your participation. And I look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting. Mark, Julie, if we get a date for the next meeting, and is there one before the elections? I'm not sure, actually.
No, there's not one before the elections, Leader. Probably maybe July, end of July time. But the program of meetings is still in draft format. That we subject to change. So
okay. Okay, thanks so much, Mark. Well, in that case, can I wish you all the very best, because elections being elections. I don't know if I'll be here. Some of you don't know if you'll be here in July, and we know some of you will definitely be stepping down, and some of us may be stepped down, whether we want to be stepped down or not. So, thank you for your participation.